Live on CBC Hockey Night in Canada, brought to you by...
Here's the brains behind the Islander dynasty.
Bryan Trottier. People said they would turn it on, and they apparently have. Here's Gretzky. The last word for Gretzky and Billy Smith. It's over. And the New York Islanders have won their fourth straight Stanley Cup.
They called it Fort Never Lose for a reason. The New York Islanders weren't the first expansion team to have major success, but they were arguably the most important. Their dynasty of the early 1980s not only was on par with the many dynasties of the Montreal Canadiens, but it disrupted an original 6 team's tight hold on one of the biggest markets in America. 4 cups over 4 years, over 3 cups in 6 years will do that. The names were legendary. Bryan Trottier, Mike Bossy, Denny Potvin, Clark Gillies, Billy Smith, and Pat LaFontaine dominated score sheets, made key saves, and provided many a big moment. The numbers were even better. 305 combined wins between the regular season and playoffs, 177 of those coming in front of some of the best crowds in history. 19 straight playoff series wins. 4 on-ice celebrations that aged so well in entertainment value with sketchy security. You get it. These guys were superheroes on Long Island. And it's no coincidence that as strong as they were on the ice, they were even stronger off of it. Bill Torrey served as the architect, building the teams for bench boss Al Arbour, the man he believed could get the most out of them. They finished dead last in their first season together in 1973-74. But 12 years, 533 regular season wins, 5 division titles, 6 conference championships, and 4 Stanley Cups later, they'd built a legacy that few expansion teams could boast. Logging nearly 20 years together with the organization, this duo provided stability at a crucial point in the franchise's formative years, and crafted an identity of what it meant to be a New York Islander. However, like everything we hold near and dear to our hearts, it had to end at some point. As this glorious era came to an end with Arbour coaching his second to last game in 1994, gotta love that one game in 07, the young franchise again entered a critical crossroad, one they hadn't experienced in over 2 decades. A fundamental change in leadership brought with it a tremendous responsibility. The successors had a tradition to pass along, a legacy to honor, and an organizational piece to keep for a new generation of Islanders fans, thirsting to relive the dynasty that put their team on. They f***ed everything up. This could go on for another 3 hours, but I'm sure you're all angry / exhausted / apathetic / please fire Garth Snow at what your hockey team became and don't need any more unrepressed memories. I'll just say this. I took you on this journey through the Islanders' highest highs and the lowest lows was to provide perspective on an identity that this franchise once reflected when its front office was in order. That identity, a product of the stability for the first 2 decades plus of the Islanders' existence, was effectively killed for an entire generation of fans. Even though Snow as the GM and Jack Capuano as the coach lasted as long as they did this decade, that directionless feeling still lingered. Yes, there were 3 playoff appearances during this era. Yes, there was even a series win coincidentally during a blue moon on the 24th of April when adopted son John baptized all of Long Island in the frozen River Hudson as Sully provided a gracious flyover. However, for much of this decade, the Isles still personified Red Queen syndrome, making moves just to survive and loosely compete rather than building to dominate like they had decades before. Snow, to his credit, did strike it rich at the tail end of his tenure as general manager with some pretty slick moves and draft selections. However, Neither Capuano nor Doug Weight could get the most out of an underachieving, albeit competitive group. This complacency may have seemed like a success given the aforementioned shenanigans years before, but in reality, it was a new kind of status quo, one that turned many a member of the faithful off, and also one that led to the end of the world.
One of the best unrestricted free agents in NHL history. John Tavares is not coming here with Matthews here. No way. No. I think he stays. I'll be at least see what's out there.
There's a buddy of mine, diehard Islander fan. For years, he's telling me the guy's not going anywhere. When I saw a message from him saying, "I'm worried," I knew hell's coming.
He's coming home, coming home.
You left him with no goalie. You left him with no building. They lose an unbelievable asset for zero.
John Tavares is a Toronto Maple Leaf.
And, wow.
The transformation was complete. In one departure, everything that became wrong with the Islanders was confirmed, and now they were truly dead. They weren't even fortunate enough to survive then die. They fucking ceased to exist. It was over. Game over. You might as well have gone to Madison Square Garden that day and injected blue food coloring into your bloodstream. There was no coming back from that. What is that? Could it be? No. I've been let on way too many times. No way! I can't believe it! A pulse! We have a pulse! Somebody call Mikey! Yes, while number 91 jerseys were being set ablaze out of rage for John Tavares exercising his right to leave an organization that was never able to effectively surround him, it seemed like the entire hockey world in that moment forgot about the symbolically seismic moves co-owners John Ledecky and Scott Malkin made weeks before. Only these weren't on-ice transactions, but moves to shore up the front office with some presence. First up was Lou Lamoriello, who became the team's general manager in early June. Though was a little on the older side, he was the perfect hire for an organization that needed a cultural lift. Over 30 years in the game, 3 cups and a Hall of Fame plaque in his back pocket, an eye for drafting cornerstones that led his teams deep, and not to mention some first-hand experience in multiple franchise turnarounds. Here you go! What the fuck is this? Who the fuck are you? It's a contract! What for? For you! Isn't this how this works? Getting all the things I've always wanted to skirt the powers that be? No, get the fuck away from me. I've got work to do. Hey, come back! Aren't you Satan? This was the first time the Islanders had hired a GM who brought an actual resume to the interview since Neil Smith. And he... well... yeah... Let's see. Okay, he's off to a good start, ladies and gentlemen. While the hiring of Lou was a leap in the right direction for the front office, down at ice level, there was still an underperforming roster that was in need of a systematic overhaul. I mean, 13 coaches in 30 years? The GM is only half the equation. You still need the right man behind the bench, and the Islanders hadn't exactly been well versed in this type of thing. If things were truly different, Lou had to get his guy, with the opportunity of a lifetime in front of him. He snagged the best coach on the market like the competent decision maker he is. Barry Trotz had just done the coaching job of his life in Washington, and to no one's surprise, he wanted to be compensated as such. Wouldn't you know, the Islanders ponied up. And really, how could you not for a guy that was lifting the cup over his head exactly 2 weeks before? It's not like the run was a fluke either. I mean, this thing was years in the making. Before he was winning President's Trophies at the clip of a .677 winning percentage with the Capitals, the man spent 15 years in Nashville helping an expansion franchise find its footing in its formative years. In almost 2 decades as a bench boss, he'd won 762 games, which placed him in the top 5 all time. Innocently enough, he was right behind Arbor, and hockey continued to have fun being appropriate. In the span of a month, the Isles had their best general manager in 26 years and their best head coach since Peter Laviolette. Although this appearance of organizational stability wasn't enough to convince Tavares to stay in the fold, the team wasn't completely lost like they would have been in years past. Besides, who needs an elite homegrown center when you've got the Matt, Val, and Leo show? Reuniting the heaviest line in history as the league gets younger and faster with the move to bring Matt Martin back? Getting instant revenge on the Leafs by taking Uncle Leo Komarov away from them? Bringing in Stanley Cup champion Valtteri Filppula that had been on the decline for multiple years with a no-move clause attached? 1 second, please. Like many of you, I had my doubts when Lou made these moves on 3 consecutive days in the wake of the latest Islanders cataclysm. However, the team wasn't going to be particularly good anyway, right? I can understand filling a lineup with some veterans while sprinkling in some of the kids. While you're at it, you might as well fill that goalie hole with Robin Lehner on a 1-year prove-it deal. He's not shy to putting up some solid numbers amid some terrible defensive play in front of him. Maybe he plays his way into a valuable trade or something, I don't know. Although they did win in the front office, the offseason was a definitive net loss for the Isles in terms of on-ice talent. Losing their best player for the upcoming campaign would obviously hurt, and the questions of adjustment were apparent. Matt Barzal did win the Calder and my heart, but being thrust into the top-line center role in your sophomore year with everyone expecting you to become the next face of the franchise would be a big test. Josh Bailey and Anders Lee did enjoy career years, but the man who played a big role in that was now in Toronto. Brock Nelson was coming off of a regression and needed to show something in a bigger role. The team turned in the worst defensive performance in about 300 years, and their adjustment from a run-and-gun style wouldn't happen overnight. Basically, like I and many others thought in September, they're not going to be as good. Bullshit. No, I didn't. You didn't either, don't lie. Barzal's looking just fine in his second year, driving play like a madman like he always has. Nelson's set to shatter his offensive marks from last year. Lee and Bailey, no matter who they're playing with, are holding their own and even strengthen the top 6. The Crash Line reunion's been a surprising success both critically and analytically. Hell, even Filppula's providing some ounce of offense. But the defense? 3 words. Night and day. Seriously. As a result, we finally get to see what Robin Lehner looks like in front of a capable defense, and damn, he's been such an incredible story. But the one constant in all of this has been Trotz. In the last decade, his teams combined to give up 29.5 shots per game, which would slot him between 7th and 8th in the league in that span. We all knew he was good at getting the most out of his players with his system, but for a team that was this reckless to adjust to his style so seamlessly and quickly is pretty remarkable. Getting a team to buy in to the point where the leaders are relaying the example is the hardest thing to do for a coach. For him to accomplish it so quickly with a team that could have been fragile is something special. Okay, now as my left brain gets a word in here, there's obviously no guarantee that this magic will last with just less than half the season remaining. The Isles obviously aren't as strong as their Metro Division counterparts, and Lehner's playing PD out of his mind. Thank God no one heard that. Lee, Nelson, and Jordan Eberle are all on expiring contracts, and intriguing decisions have to be made regarding potential trades. For the record, I originally wanted to move Jordan Eberle to open up a spot for a certain somebody, but I think they've earned the right to stay together and see what happens. Soon, Joshua. Soon! But that's up to you. All I'm saying is that it wouldn't be surprising to see this train slow down a little. However, the beauty of the situation, no matter what happens, this won't be a one-time run like many others before. In fact, the Isles are just getting started. Lamoriello and Trotz, much like their predecessors from the 70s, built up organizations in their own unique ways with long-term plans and structured systems that led to consistent years of contention. In both cases, they've also reaped the rewards of those journeys, earning respect and building identities that define their franchises. Due to gross out-of-touch ownership, management that made Matt Millen look like fucking Walt Disney, and a coaching carousel that never slowed down to put a system in place, the Islanders lost theirs. With Lamoriello and Trotz, they're already on track to build a new one. The buy-in is there from the current roster as evidenced by the early returns. The young core that's starting to reveal itself is only going to grow. There are reinforcements tooling up right behind them that look to make an impact in the coming years. These new-look Islanders won't win 4 straight Stanley Cups. They may not have as many players blossom into Hall of Famers. Belmont Park won't replace the home ice advantage brought by Fort Neverlose in its heyday. However, the same front office stability that was instrumental in building those teams has finally returned. With it, perhaps some of the same success will too. And of course you can't go wrong with Nick Leddy! He's a f***ing rover! Look at what you're missing, Stan! Look at that defensive play! Look at those declining point totals and advanced stats! All things considered, he's due for a correction, and I still believe in him, and everyone else can go